Hey, welcome back to Being Integrated. My name is Jude. I'm a meditation teacher and also a therapist. On this channel, I make practices integrating psychotherapy and meditation. So if that interests you, you can subscribe. I definitely appreciate that. This video is a meditation app review. Which meditation app is best? I definitely have a lot of opinions, and I have to say I'm very biased and I do have some conflicts of interest. I actually wrote some meditations for Calm. If you use the app, I wrote a bunch of the daily Calms, and I also worked with Jeff Warren on the How to Meditate course that's on Calm. So I do have a conflict of interest, but I'm going to try to really state that and be as fair as possible to all the apps, and I think you'll see as I go, I do a pretty fair job. But you can be the judge. You can leave a comment if you think I'm being a little too harsh or a little too biased or a little too generous, because that could definitely be the case as well. Okay, so spoiler alert, there is no best meditation app. It actually doesn't exist. The thing with meditation is there isn't a best style or a best way of meditating. It's what works for you. It's finding what your goals are, what your challenges are, and then finding the techniques, the approaches, the teachers that you resonate with that are going to help you along in your own unique journey. So no two people are the same. We don't think the same. We don't feel the same. Our nervous systems are unique. Our minds are unique. And we're going to resonate with different styles of practices. We're going to have different challenges in our practice. Some people are too emotionally dysregulated where they're just feeling way too much. Other people are completely numb. So the more numbed out people are going to resonate with teachers who are teaching you how to open up your feelings, whereas the more emotionally vibrant people are going to be resonating with the teachers who are exploring how to get more grounded and centered in your emotional world. It's the same with working with thoughts. There's so many different ways of working with thoughts. You can work with just the form of thoughts, just how thoughts appear to you, or you can look at the content. You can look at the root of the thoughts. What's the belief or the fear or the desire that's beyond the thought? And some teachers focus more on looking at the content and looking more deep into what's motivating the thought, while other teachers focus more on deconstructing the thinking process, looking at how thoughts appear in the visual and auditory sense. So there are so many ways of meditating. There are so many ways of learning meditation. There are so many unique approaches. Yes, the underlying principles are basically the same, but our journey to really realize these things is unique to us. So at the end of this video, I'm going to give a very generalized recommendation based on what you're looking for or what your interests are or what your challenges are, and then what meditation app will be best for you. But it's really worth listening to each individual review, because I think you'll learn a lot of valuable information through the process that is going to help you make a good decision for yourself. So the first app I want to review is Headspace, and I gotta say I was actually a bit impressed. I liked it more than I thought I would. So Headspace was created by a man named Andy Puttycombe, and I didn't really know much about him before going in. I was a little bit skeptical, but as I explored the app and as I did more research on Andy, I really started to like him, and I really appreciated his approach and his style of leading and guiding meditations. I found it really interesting that Andy was a monk in the Tibetan Buddhist lineage, which doesn't really come through in the app because Tibetan Buddhism is so entrenched in culture and all these kinds of esoteric type practices that it doesn't really translate to a mindfulness app. But even though Andy studied largely in the Tibetan tradition, it's very clear that he's well-rounded and he really brought in a lot of different types of practices. Headspace has kind of a fun, cartoony vibe, and what I really liked about it was your ability to set really short or long meditations. I will say there is a bit of a limitation on the longer end of the meditation. It only goes up to 20 minutes, but if you do want to sit for more than 20 minutes, you could always just sit once the meditation's over, just set your own timer and meditate like people did before we had apps. That being said, Headspace is a very approachable and straightforward app. I really like the directness of his style of teaching. There's a real emphasis on the foundations, which I think is very good, very important. A lot of talk about non-identification, a lot of body scans. If you want a good intro to meditation, Headspace is a very good intro. It really lays down this solid foundation for your practice, so in that sense I recommend it. Now, to be a bit critical, I did find Andy's voice to be a bit harsh and sometimes a bit jarring. If you're in Meditation, you're getting really soothed and relaxed, and you're not expecting his voice to come in. Sometimes when it does come in, there's a bit of a jarring because he does speak in this very strong way. That being said, I actually like that style of voice. I like that style of leading practice. So it just depends on you more so if you are bothered by his style of speaking. The other thing is they rolled out a bunch of like specialty type meditations. They're always rolling out new stuff, but I really don't see them going far outside of the box that they were already in. I see them as just finding kind of new ways of applying the same stuff over and over, which I think in some ways is very good. Those foundational aspects of meditation are great, but there is actually more you can bring in. So I think for such a huge app, they are really limiting themselves by only really having Andy as the meditation guide. I know it's his app, but I think that they would do a lot better if they brought in a more diverse set of teachers that had more diverse skills, and I really don't think there's any good reason not to. Sure, it's nice to have the same guy doing all the meditations. It's nice to have that consistency, but if you have such a big app, if you have such a big following, find some other experts, find some other great people to bring in to offer more variety, to offer different approaches for your users. So all in all, Headspace, very good app. It's great. It's great for beginners. If you already use the app and like it, that's great. But it isn't the first one I would recommend, and I don't think I'd actually really recommend it to anyone, and I'll go into that, why I would recommend other apps above that later. Okay, so the next app is Calm. Like I said, I worked for Calm. When I first started working for Calm a few years ago, it was really all Tamara Levitt. She is the voice of the app. She is the one who created all the original content. It was really her vision, content-wise. There were other people who were working on a lot of other aspects of the app, but she was really the heart and soul of the content of the app. She did a very good job, and she is the reason why the app has become the most successful meditation app in the world. I've met lots of people who use the app, and a lot of them really love Tamara's voice. They really love her calm, soothing, almost like this mothering, caring voice. Turns out she used to be a singer, and that makes a lot of sense. She really has a great voice that a lot of people get really attached to. It's quite different from Andy's voice, which is kind of harsh and direct, and Tamara's just kind of pulls you in and cradles you and holds you. And Calm was originally very similar to Headspace in that it was a very foundational approach to meditation that really focused on the core aspects. And I really like that about all these apps. I think that is a great approach if you're new and learning. There is a lot you can branch out to, but to really get the fundamentals is the most important thing. The great thing about Calm, though, was that as they grew, they brought in more teachers. They brought in some really great teachers. Now, if you use the app, you've probably noticed there's this guy named Jeff Warren who they've been featuring. The first thing they put up from Jeff on Calm was this How to Meditate course. It was a 30-day meditation course. Each meditation was a short guided practice showing you some different aspect of understanding meditation. And I really think that the How to Meditate course is one of the best introduction to meditation courses ever done, hands down. I think it's excellent, it's approachable, it's fun, it keeps you engaged, it keeps things fresh, and you're always learning. Every session you learn something. That being said, I worked on the course. I helped Jeff with the original kind of plan, layout, flow. I kind of wrote some early drafts, but Jeff really then made it his own. He really formed it into what it is now, and I can't really take any credit for the finished product, although I'm very happy to be a part of the process. Now, what makes Jeff so interesting is that Jeff was a professional writer. He wrote for large publications, and he was excellent with language, and he was also very fun and funny writer. And he's taken those same writing skills and his love for ideas and learning and understanding new things and saying them in a really captivating way. All of that he's applied to meditation, which makes him a very unique meditation teacher. And I think he's probably one of the best meditation teachers for beginners in the sense that his language is really approachable. He uses different metaphors and conceptual paradigms than other meditation teachers. I find A lot of meditation teachers are saying the same things over and over, and they're all good things, which is why they're all saying them. But when you hear a fresh metaphor or a fresh perspective on an old idea, it can make it come alive in a new way. And Jeff brings that. He brings so much freshness to the way that he teaches. He's not really like anyone else. So in that sense, I highly recommend Jeff. I highly recommend the How to Meditate course. He also has a YouTube channel. It's just called Jeff Warren. You can check it out. I've been featured there a few times, so you can check those videos out. Jeff does a weekly live stream. Sometimes it's even twice a week, and it's very good. I would highly recommend checking out Jeff in general. I would highly recommend checking out Jeff on the Calm app. Obviously, I'm very biased. He's one of my closest friends, but I really do believe he's that good, and he's just a lovable guy. You'll see, he's very genuine. He really shares his own struggles. Jeff has ADHD, and he actually has a type of bipolar disorder, and he really draws on his challenges and works that into everything he teaches. And in that sense, his stuff is very relatable. He comes off as very human, and he's really teaching from his experience. If you're somebody who has ADHD or dysregulated energy, I think Jeff is one of the best teachers out there for you, because you'll very much be able to relate to him in a way that you probably won't to a lot of other meditation teachers. I've personally found that most people with ADHD don't become meditation teachers. It's pretty opposite end of the spectrum. That being said, I have ADHD, which is probably one of the reasons why me and Jeff connected so much. And if you do have ADHD, or you struggle with just feelings of restlessness or distractibility, then I just want to let you know that you should probably subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I do a lot on ADHD, and especially my newsletter. There's a link below, because I'm working on an ADHD course, and I'm giving out a lot of free content around meditation for ADHD. I really explore how to integrate pragmatic ADHD strategies, as well as working directly with the underlying challenges of ADHD and working with just the nature of distractibility itself. I integrate all this into guided practice meditations, and I make them engaging so you're less likely to tune out. So if that interests you, please sign up for the meditation below, and you can get free meditations and lots of resources to help you on your journey of overcoming ADHD. Okay, so back to Calm. So yes, Tamara is great. She has a very traditional, foundational, straightforward style. Jeff is amazing, coming up with new, fun, engaging ways of teaching meditation and actually teaching you the skills of meditation, teaching you how to bring the meditative qualities into your everyday life. That's what Jeff is all about. But there's also other great teachers. There's also a bunch of music stuff you can do. I'm not going to review the music stuff. I'm not a music review guy. But there's a ton of features with Calm. They're always coming up with new content. And overall, I'm super excited for all the new content that Jeff is working on for them. He's excited. I've never seen him so excited to be working on content. Honestly, in like the 8 years I've known him, he's super pumped on what he's working on right now. So I'm excited to see what's coming out. So yes, I give Calm a huge 2 thumbs up. But if you're not a new meditator, if you're a more advanced meditator, you're looking to dive in deeper, then Calm isn't the app I'd recommend. It's actually 1 or 2 of the ones that I have coming up, so you can stay tuned for those ones. Okay, so the next app is 10% Happier with Dan Harris, and I gotta say, I'm also biased here because Dan Harris co-authored a book with Jeff Warren. The follow-up to his 10% Happier book was called Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics, and he featured Jeff. Jeff was the teacher, and that was Jeff's big break. And 10% Happier was the first app that Jeff really worked for, and he still works for them. So he's still creating content for them, although he's primarily creating content for Calm right now. So what I gotta say about 10% Happier is I think it's actually the best curated app, and I'm standing by that. That it really is so well curated for a beginner meditator. They have Joseph Goldstein on there, who is just one of the best in the game. He's a legend in Western Buddhism for good reason. He's very approachable. He's a very direct teacher, and overall, can't say enough great things about him as a teacher. He's featured on the app. There's video conversations with him that introducing the ideas, the concepts, and the practice of meditation. I think that 10% Happier is an excellent app for beginners. There are so many great teachers on this app. Sharon Salzberg is on there, who's also a very famous teacher who's known for her loving kindness practices. I found out about this woman, Anushka, who's just amazing. She's on the app, and I really connect with her and her kind of direct, authentic way of teaching. I think that 10% Happier, they just have very good curatorial skills. They're really good at putting it together, and they also have fun things. They have lots of videos on the app, engaging kind of narratives that pull you in. Every course is extremely well produced. I really like that Orange Sofer has this course on emotions there, which I think is something that is so important and so under talked about or undervalued in the normal meditative world. Dan Harris can be fun and funny and engaging if you like his style of humor. So if you're a beginner and you're looking for an app that has a nice diverse set of teachers, but really great teachers, I would highly recommend the 10% Happier app. I really like the video features, I really like the diversity of the courses, and I really like the production quality, that everything is super well put together. And now I don't really have any criticisms about the app. It's really more, do you vibe with Dan? Do you vibe with the teachers? And are you a beginner or not? Because if you're a beginner to intermediate, then I think it's quite a good app. But if you're looking for more advanced stuff, then one of the other apps is what I'm going to recommend to you. That being said, I think a lot of advanced meditators can still learn a lot from exploring different teachers and even what you might consider like a preliminary or more introductory teachings around topics that they're not as familiar with. I do know some very experienced and competent meditators who do use the 10% Happier app, so I really do think that it's a great app, and I do highly recommend it. Okay, so the next app I'm going to review is Insight Timer. Insight Timer is also a very popular app. I know a lot of people who use it who really love it. On the good side, there is a ton of content. There is so much content on this app. You can dive so deep into so many obscure topics. You can find really interesting talks about like certain lineages of Zen Buddhism, and then you could also find more kind of popular mainstream stuff, courses by people like Tara Brach, who is one of the best meditation teachers out there right now. She's very popular for a very good reason. I really love her approach. Jack Kornfield's also on there. There's a lot of really excellent courses by excellent teachers on there. That being said, there's a lot of mediocre content on there as well. And even when I first used the app, the featured meditation for that day, I listened to it and I really, really didn't vibe with it. There were so many things in that meditation that I thought were really not what meditation is about at all. Like one of the phrases in it was, everything happens for a reason. And I understand that that can be a very comforting phrase for people. People like to say that all the time, but I feel like it's a very kind of superficial statement that in some contexts could be exactly what needs to be said, but ultimately reality is so much more rich and complex, and meditation is not about believing things happen for a reason. It's not about believing things at all. It's about just being fully present to whatever's unfolding without judgment, without bias, without attaching yourself to any outcome. And I do think that everything happens for a reason is kind of some way of attaching yourself to an outcome. It's trying to see things through a more positive lens, where meditation is really about transcending the positive-negative duality. It's really about seeing things without judgment. Positive and negative are both judgments. So you have to look beyond the judgment. You have to overcome the judgmental nature of mind. And like that's where there's real freedom. It's about freedom. It's not about positivity. Okay, with that rant being said, I loved a lot about the Insight Timer app. I loved a lot of the courses. I did find that the meditation teachers I liked on the app didn't have that much content on the app. They did have content. There's a lot on there, like I said, that's very good. But also, if you're new and you don't really know what you're looking for, you might get lost in all the content. So I really do appreciate something like the 10% Happier or the Common Headspace, where it's more curated, it's more refined, it's more like you can start here. These are the good beginner meditations. If you're somewhat experienced and if you're really into the exploratory thing, if you like to explore new content and try it on and see if it fits or not, then Insight Timer can be a great app for you. Like I said, I have friends who use Insight Timer and absolutely love it. I'm sure they go on to meditation courses and don't like them and then find one that they do like. So that's part of the process. So overall, Insight Timer is an excellent app for its range of content, but it is definitely not a well-curated app, nor is the production level very high. I found that some of the courses were obviously very well produced. I'm sure the meditation teacher produced them themselves, And some of them were absolutely not well produced. They weren't well recorded, the audio didn't sound great, and also they weren't well structured. They weren't thought out in a way that is really conducive to learning for the listener. So that's my criticism of it, that you really have the best and the worst on the same app. So it's up to you if that appeals to you. If you do like to explore, if you do want endless content, then definitely check it out. Okay, the next up is Waking Up with Sam Harris. Now, I kind of wanted to not like this app, I gotta say. I have mixed feelings about Sam Harris as a meditation teacher. Now, say what you want about everything he says. I know he's a very polarizing figure. I have friends who absolutely love him. I have friends who hate him. I'm not on the extreme ends of him. Sometimes I love what he says, sometimes I don't. As a meditation teacher, I originally didn't really vibe with him. I read his book, Waking Up, when it first came out, maybe like 7 years ago. And while I liked parts of it, there was a lot that I felt wasn't really relaying things the way that I feel it's best for people to learn. What I'm saying is that if you have a highly analytical mind, if you are somebody who is cerebral and rational, kind of more of like an academically minded person, then you have a good chance of vibing with Sam Harris. That's the way his mind is, and he's going to teach in a way that resonates with him, that's going to resonate with more people like him. I thought that it wasn't really going to be my vibe, but I went into the app, I tried it out, and I actually really liked it. And not only did I like the way that Sam taught, the core meditations of the app were very good, all taught by Sam. I thought it was a nice flow. I really liked a lot of the ways that he directs your attention. I also really liked a lot of the features he had on the app. Sam really loves this stuff. He's so passionate about the learning and the cutting edge of meditation and really waking up. And it really comes through in the conversations he has with the people that are featured on the app. Some of my favorite teachers are featured, such as Locke Kelly or Adyashanti, as well as a number of other conversations that really interested me. He has Will B. Britton on, talking about the dark side, the weird stuff that can happen in meditation that isn't exactly pleasant or favorable. He has Roland Griffiths on, talking about psychedelic experience, which is something else I'm very interested in. He has David Trelevin talking about trauma and meditation. I really love his work, and I really love the stuff that he's done. If you personally have a history of trauma or just overwhelming emotional experiences and you want to use meditation to help, I would absolutely recommend David Trelevin's book called Trauma Sensitive Mindfulness. It's excellent, and I've definitely integrated it into the way that I teach. He has Rupert Spira on, who does really interesting non-duality talks. If you're into this whole awakening thing, I would absolutely recommend checking him out as well. He also has a great YouTube channel. The thing that sets Waking Up apart from the other apps so far is that Sam Harris is really about awakening. He's about talking about enlightenment, and the other apps aren't. And it's not that the other apps aren't actually bringing you in that direction, because they absolutely are. It's just that the idea of awakening or enlightenment is still kind of this new fringe idea in Western culture. When Buddhism first came in the 60s, of course that was a theme. That was something that a lot of people talked about, but it was also something that a lot of teachers decided was best not to really talk about explicitly, because it seemed like such a far-off thing. It seemed so intangible or unrealistic to really attain it, that they thought, okay, let's not talk about getting this thing, because then people are just going to be really working hard towards getting the thing, while meditation is very much the opposite of working hard towards something. It's actually about fully letting go and surrendering. They already thought that Western culture was too achievement and goal-oriented, that they decided not to really put an emphasis on awakening, because it would just be another thing that, you know, Westerners would try to attain and do to the max. But now what we've seen happen more lately, especially in the last decade, is more of an interest, especially in the Western world, around awakening, and people who are actually talking about it openly, talking about the nature of awakening. Obviously, like I mentioned, Rupert Spira is one. Sam Harris is talking about it. Adyashanti's talking about it. There's a lot of great teachers who are really helping people get there and talking about it as a realistic thing that anyone can achieve, although not easily. And I think that should be emphasized, that it's not an easy journey. It requires a lot of sacrifice, a lot of giving up in your inner world. You really surrender it. So Sam Harris's app is really the first one to emphasize the nature of awakening, and in this there's an emphasis on the no self. In Buddhism, there's something that they call the three characteristics. I talk about this in my Introduction to Buddhist Psychology video. There are these three marks of existence, these three truths of reality that we typically don't see, that we have to actually work hard to internalize. And meditation practice is largely about internalizing these three characteristics. And one of them is the no self, which is often called no self. It's not actually that the self doesn't exist, it's that the self doesn't exist as we perceive it to exist, that there isn't this separate being in us. It's really examining what makes me me, and where does the me reside, and is the me consistent, is it static, is it alive? It's really exploring the nature of self and the limitations of self, or maybe the limitless nature of self. So Sam Harris really loves to explore these concepts. He really loves to dive deep into these types of questions. If these types of things appeal to you, then I would absolutely recommend the Waking Up app. The other great thing is that if you don't have money and you can't afford it, you can shoot them an email. It says right in the introductory audio thing that you can shoot them an email and no questions asked. They will grant you 1 year access to the app. And if at the end of the year you still can't afford it, you can just send them another email and they'll give you another year free access. I think on one hand that's a very generous thing. It could also be a bit of a strategy to get more users, considering that it's a highly competitive space right now. But it's a very good app and it really does hold up. So if you're looking for a type of app that is really focusing on awakening but also has this kind of cerebral, contemplative quality exploration, then I would highly recommend the Waking Up app. Okay, so the last app that I'm reviewing is called Brightmind. And again, I do have some bias here. Brightmind was founded by two guys named Toby and Christian, and Toby is a very good friend of mine. I actually subletted my room to him for a while. Me and Toby have meditated together, we've worked together, and we've partied together. We've had a lot of good times, and I really love the guy, and I really support him in what he's doing. I think he's actually doing an excellent job, and I'm not just saying that because we're buddies. He really is a brilliant person. He is really super dedicated to the path of meditation. Toby suffers from Lyme disease, which is extremely painful. It's very challenging for him, and he has used meditation to really cope in life and to really overcome a lot of the barriers, a lot of the pain, a lot of the challenges of Lyme disease. He's a very inspiring guy, and he's a really nice guy, and he has a huge heart, and he's very dedicated. He lived at what's called a monastic academy for quite a while, living like a modern monastic life where he was really dedicated to practice and learning. But then he went on to found this app, and the app is all based on his primary teacher's teachings, the man Shinzen Young, who I would probably also consider my primary teacher, and who Jeff Warren would also consider his primary teacher. Shinzen Young is really a living legend in the world of meditation. There's really no one else like him. He is somebody who is extremely articulate, extremely scientifically minded, but also so richly steeped in all the old traditions and so incredibly well studied. He is really a scholar of Buddhism, a scholar of Western spiritual traditions, a scholar of language, and he pulls it all together and teaches in such this pragmatic way. Shinzen has created one of the most brilliant paradigms for learning and practicing meditation. For me, it changed my game. Jeff Warren as well, if you look at the way he is teaching Shinzen Young's paradigm, but making it a lot more accessible to new people. So if you like Jeff Warren and you start to get familiar with the language he uses, especially the terms concentration, clarity, equanimity, then you will probably really like Shinzen Young. Shinzen Young, again, he's very kind of cerebral and heady, but once you get into him, he's just such an endless wealth of new information and excellent teaching, and he is so thorough in the way that he answers questions. Now, Shinzen teaches a very particular style of vipassana. Vipassana is mindfulness. It's a way of noticing your sensory experience, mainly your thoughts, and breaking your thoughts down into visual and auditory, and then also your feelings. And I personally love this system. It's kind of clunky at the start if you're not used to it. It takes a while to really get into, but I think it's one of the best systems for people who are especially analytical. If you're an analytical minded person, I can't recommend Shinzen enough. I think in some ways he's similar to Sam Harris's approach, but he has way more depth. He has way more experience. So Brightmind, the app, was created to bring Shinzen's system, Shinzen's style of teaching to the world. So it's basically like this virtual Shinzen app where he's guiding you through learning to meditate the way that he teaches, which is really boiling it down to the most fundamental aspects of mindfulness, but going so deep into them. So really the depth of this app is never ending. You can go so deep into this practice. In some ways, it would be the only app you need if you really vibe with this style of mindfulness noting practice. If you're curious about what he teaches, you can check out the rest of my videos. I have 2 courses, one about mindfulness in everyday life and one about intro to mindfulness meditation. Both of those are really introductory to Shinzen's style of teaching, except maybe in a more approachable, more kind of straightforward way, or at least with my own twist on it. The app gives you 2 options, either Shinzen's voice, which definitely has its own style and character to it, or Juliana Ray's voice. Juliana was a brilliant singer, but she's also a brilliant meditation teacher. And so her voice is really lovely. So you can try those both out, choose which voice you prefer. Brightmind is structured in a way that is perfect for beginners as well. So if you are a beginner, you can try it out and you can see if it really vibes with you. And then it builds as it goes. He introduces more and more until you get a really deep, rich, complex understanding of what it means to be a mindfulness practitioner or a Vipassana insight meditation practitioner. If I have any criticisms about it, it's just that it's kind of narrow, that this style of meditation practice is probably not for everyone, or I could say maybe it's definitely not for everyone. But I really love it. A lot of my friends really love it. So it depends. It may take longer to get into, but again, the app kind of walks you in. It walks you slowly through the process. It doesn't have as many bells and whistles as the other apps. It doesn't have like music stuff. It doesn't have as much diversity around teachers and styles. But that being said, it is an app that goes extremely deep into one traditional style of practice that's been modernized and simplified. I think in some ways it's incredibly brilliant and I personally love it. All right, so conclusion and recommendations. So if you're a beginner meditation looking for just some engagement in beginner style meditation, I would say Calm or 10% Happier are your best bets. Calm, I really love. I give it a slight edge up over 10% Happier only because Jeff is now more committed to Calm and creating content. So ultimately, Calm is going to have more Jeff content. And I clearly have the bias towards Jeff, especially if you're a beginner meditator. But I do think that if you give Jeff an honest shot, if you check him out, you'll probably see why I'm so biased towards him, why I like him so much, and why I really appreciate his style of teaching. It's more engaging. It's easier for me, at least, to stay focused on. I find his style more interesting. It's more stimulating to my mind and I can get more into it. I've learned more from Jeff than I have probably from anyone else, maybe except for Shinzen Young. And he really is just one of the best teachers out there, especially for beginners or people who are looking for a fresh perspective to maybe re-enliven their practice. 10% Happier is also great. It also has an excellent curated choice of teachers. I think you really can't go wrong. They both have free trials, so if you're a beginner, I would say try out 10% Happier, try out Calm, and see which one you like more. So if you're looking for more depth in practice, if you're really into the kind of philosophical ideas, the contemplative ideas around Buddhism, around these types of Eastern traditions, then I would highly recommend Waking Up by Sam Harris. For its content, for its rich conversations, for its contemplative perspective. Or I would recommend Brightmind for its extremely clear instructions around practice. I think that Brightmind has probably the clearest and the most in-depth instructions around deepening your quality of awareness, deepening your equanimity, deepening your clarity, deepening your concentration. Brightmind is really unparalleled because they have taken a really excellent teacher and gone extremely into depth with that teacher. So it's not just some preliminary intro courses, it's actually real deal deep meditation. And really, it's all about what resonates with you. There is no best way, there's no best teacher, there's no best app or technique. It's really about finding the practices that you can do. That being said, if you're into all this, if you're into exploring practices, you might want to check out the practices on my channel, which are all free. Sign up for my newsletter if you like practices around working with ADHD and distractibility and restlessness. And if you have anything to add to the conversation, please leave a comment. If you appreciate this video, you can like it, you can subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm really excited to hear what you all have to say.